This is something everyone knows. But no one does. And I included myself because recently I threw a few multistills at Kave to take out the cheek scene since I did not have it and Itty. I wanted to play and test with the Bloom team from Nilu. And today, thinking about that, and many times you ask me what constellation of the 4 stars is important, we will have a very different tier list with an idea that will surely help the community a lot. Since it is a list of the best constellations of the 4 stars. Both on one side, and if there are people who do not know to what extent to warm up by a 4 stars and not always the 6 is the best, as well as by the point of help, and that there is people who know which is the best constellation of each character, both when it works well and the character prime. 4 stars, just in case you already have that constellation, don't get hot, don't keep pulling, and don't lose the pity go in a 5 stars. So today I bring you, and we bring you from the channel team a tier list of the best constellations of the 4 stars. I don't know if the video is going to be long or short as you like, shorty, but thanks to the editors and you know. Leave a good like, a good Bennett ulti, subscribe, leave a good comment for the algorithm. Thank you for your support, you know that helps the channel a lot to position itself. It's recommended, grown up and explode in NATLAN because it's going to explode like Bennett's exploiters. And let's go with the 4-star tier list and say constellations of the 4 stars. Well, it's 4-star constellations, this I say, and it's important for the following. Many would expect that perhaps, well, as it is a 4-star tier, well, we already have no because it's one of the best constellations that could ever change your account. So we start, and the good thing is that with each character I'll make a brief description. I'll tell you the constellation, the one that might give it a good performance, and the one that can change the character. Let's start perhaps by order, be in order of departure, in fact the characters from Fontaine to the oldest. As we know that older ones like Bennett, Xingqiu and others are interesting, this time I will start from the end to the beginning, on day. Gaming does one already can do all its function and burst all the abysses. Chinks, as you well know, gives it 20 probability and 40 critical years in your descending executed from elementary. Let's remember the gaming combo is ulti. 2 descending from the elemental, a descending with the jump, with a blitz command and scale with your normal attack, and then from there 1 with the elemental, 1 with a controllable, 1 elemental, 1 controllable with which does not contribute to 100% of your damage until G6, but is important with which. The cone, gaming works perfectly, the 6 will put it in a high, and we will see because there will be other constellations that directly. So now that I think about it, disclaimer, there are characters who are dedicated supports that your 6 is super. Important to enable equipment such as Sarah that in fact without chicks I do not recommend it. Guru for example can be played without chicks, which is not normal in dedicated supports. Mika can also be played without chicks but are important, but for example, Faruzan is another character that without the cheeks literally, it doesn't work, so this is interesting to start like this because literally I say that Faruzan and Sarah is that if you don't have the cheeks new, I would recommend not even playing Faruzan and Sarah. Now for closing Mika and Guru. Mika, if you can play as best in slot, if you're going to play Furina, Raiden, Eula without reaching G6, just with the C2 to win A little more load and attack speed. The C5 is the one that already gives you the elemental +3 for more attack speed, and now the cheeks gives you the bonus extra physical damage that would still be quite interesting, but Mika and Guru can be played on their teams from both Eula and Ito respectively without the cheeks, are strong with the cheeks, but can be played without cheeks. Then there are characters that don't depend on a constellation. Kuki has a 6 that you already know has happened to many that when she enters the field and throws the elemental, her life bar decreases as Hu Tao. Because basically what happens with Kuki, it's that he has a 6 that if you get hit at the exact moment and everything else, you don't go to the other neighborhood, you get 1 of life and that makes it many times, plus activates a passive that gives you even more mastery, and will do more damage to Hyperbloom with which. Kuki's Cheeksy is interesting, but it is not necessary. Kuki to Chero does its work perfectly. And if you have a minimum of reflexes and hands or repeat the room and nothing happens, Kuki doesn't even remember that his chicks exists, and you will remember it once every. So I'll put it around here because Kuki Chero is an apocalypse giant that would go super up in Nat 4 but as a constellation. She does everything to Chero, so go down here. Beander still in order because Yatvi brought some support dedicated to Faye. Chevrois is a 4-star Nile for overload teams instead of Bloom. Many people consider it a kind of dedicated support like these characters, but the truth is that the function is different, is more enabling like Nile, and the reality is that the cone gives more energy to a character. Good to the whole team, but only once by rotation, and then the chicks what it does is give only the character in field and repeat. Only to the character in the field, receiving healing from Chevreuse, an elemental damage bonus of 20% that stakes 3 times each tick. Healing that are very slow, with which Chevreuse, unlike the rest of dedicated supports, it seeks is in fact even bad. No one kills for Chevreuse's checks, and Chevreuse happens to him like Kuki is a character who does everything perfectly to Cheru. Your cone is interesting, but it doesn't matter exactly what Chevreuse does to Cheru does everything you have to do now, Sucrose. A Sucrose is not only one of the most important characters in the game, and I'm putting it a little earlier, now we go with the Sathos order and everything else, but basically Sucrose happens to him a simple thing, and is that she with the cone wins a charge. More of your elementary ability has 15 seconds of cooldown your elementary, if I remember correctly, and it is independent cooldown, and besides it has the sacrifice that allows you to have an elemental reset as well. That makes you have 3 elementals in the first rotation, and in the second rotation 2. If you did not have the cone, you would have 2 elementals in the first rotation and in the second. Rotation 1 is practically half the energy with the cone of Sucrose, with which is super important, that cone. I don't know if it's the cone or the C2 right now. I think it's the cone that gives you the double elementary ability with which the cone of Sucrose. To put around here in that, now we do follow the order. Sathos is an electro carry that, as I said in other tier and videos, and his will and the whole story is there like that as Freminate or as Yanfei, or as these 4 stars carries that good. Back, because very simple, I'm going to put it around here in C, because it really doesn't even matter to see its constellation is important. But the character as such wouldn't maybe in B under, but it happens with Sathos, is that he has a passive that every time you pull a loaded subtraction, your own energy has a low cost and will be played with equipment that generate a decent energy mainly. The core of Sathos is the same as that of Clorinda, and that of But is Fiorina Nahida Baiju is his best in slot, and the problem that's happening with Sathos is that your CCs isn't that it's incredibly powerful, is that it's pending your C6 makes that energy cost. That you lose, you restore it. Then you no longer lose energy with each charged, then at that moment, because you can no longer not build so much energy recharge and just build critical ratio and so on, so that it's a carry, and at the end of the day, with chicks and being below Clorinda in optimal condition, with which Sathos has a fun 6 around here, but not even. Charlotte has a cone and a C2 that add up to more attack that translates into more healing 1. C4 that gives you more energy, and Charlotte really Chero does everything right, just like Kuki and Chevreuse, but even her without Constellations bring less than the 2 of them, so Charlotte 0 doesn't have to be killed by Constellations. They don't do anything Freminate. Freminate around here at Sathos' height, very similar to his chicks as a carry, what he does is basically give you more probability. Critical damage so that you catch the proportion, so that you don't build too much recharge and you can reach some damage, as I say. Simila to Yula, if you had a team of Freminate with Farina, with Mika Chingsim, and with a Cry, that is with an Electro that can be Raiden or Fischl, in the case of Freminate perfectly Fischl, because Raiden sees with Eula because it gives more damage to the effect. Team in Freminate, its damage comes from its elementary ability, and physical hits it releases with its elementary ability with it, which combines better with Fischl and has a 6 than to be carry since very powerful, and such, but not useful for anything, no. Just no equipment does not enable you anything new, does not improve UA with the CS use, just as it does not improve the CX with which they are important 6. But here in B, because you're not going to change the Linnet account, has a C4 that doubles your elementary ability, gives you 2 loads like the Cone of Yelland. This facilitates exploration for those who have Linnet in their scanning equipment, and also does that more energy is generated for the equipment in addition to this Linnet, is being played with Favonius, or with Sacrifice simply. With its support role of putting Green Shadow Bufar, the team throw the ulti to generate a taunt to the enemies, and that they don't hit you and generate energy apart from exploration. That is, it's useful. It's got a lot of good things even if it's used. Less than Kazuha, than Sucrose as support Sanemo, then the C4 of Linnet is interesting to double its elementary ability, because it maximizes its contribution as its port, and besides having 2 elementals and when Elemental Castellas does the loss, and make a living like Fontaine's characters in general. And that's because if you wear it as Scaramouche's sub DPS with Farazan Chikdays, it also gives you the activation of the Ghost Hunter to go a year as a Scaramouche team would not go Green Shadow, so Linnet is weird, but your C4 goes down here because it's very interesting. In fact, I'm going to put Gaming above Guru. And Mika, because to Gaming as a carry is one of the best carries of the game, being 4 stars, and directly would be the Gynesis. It's the same thing as Linnet, just that Dory doesn't do anything on any account, so basically Dory has a 6 that imbues you too of Electro to be able to be carried in the field of Hyperbloom, that is to say to be the one of Kooky, but in field playing triple Mastery and then Electro gluing every time you throw away your Elemental, that besides if you go with Sacrifice you can double your Elemental. And that's about 8-9 seconds in the field exploding Hyperblooms with both your ulti and your basic imbued. Electro is important is not a curiosity of how you could play Dory, but forget about Koli Koli, really it's important. Is the C2 is a decent support, but today, this below, all the rest of the supports inside was used at first because there were no more characters inside, but to this day it has been very, very, very displaced even by the same traveler inside. That it's free and they gave it to you, they give it to you at the same height of school, i.e. when they start their Miru, so Cole, their C2 is. The important and what it does is that you earn more seconds of imbuing inside the enemies because what it does is that after of your Miran, you want that extra area that will apply inside to melee the enemies, and you are not given more seconds of the ulti or something like that. I want to remember the thing is that your C2 is the important one because it makes you eventually your application time from within. To be a support inside the field is slightly bigger. Change the accounts, not the truth is that not the school. They give it away, and if they want it at any time it will come out C2, and until so I will put it around here in B below next Heizo, and a C4 that gives you energy. And a 6 that just like Freminet. What adds up to you is more critical probability and critical damage to your ability. Elemental, which is your punch that you have every 10 seconds with which you could throw 2 by rotation, at the beginning at the end is. Interesting man as you go with Farusantin 6 Fiorina, CT2. And Bennett already many people I myself have reached 600,000 more than 500,000. With the punch I remember when I did that. Many people said my Raiden beats less mini because having is fun a punch it. There is 500,000 but it has no more and at year level by total rotation, it is already still below. If today they are very brazen. In optimal conditions with which I would put it over here, Freminet, but you won't change the Candace account. Dory with these people around here that chicks makes your ulti do more hydro multi-hits, that's fine, depends on there are teams where hydro multi-hits could hurt because they can steal you vaporized, so literally the cheek specifically from Candace increases total damage but can, as I say, harm on some particular equipment, so the Seeks of Candace, even bad Fitzy, has 2 important constellations that are the C4 that increases the bloom damage generated by the fit itself, but remember, bloom teams are complicated that all the blums generate a single character, and then the chicks that gives you every 3 seconds. A hit equivalent to your elemental that forces all the blums to explode, and this chicks continues to increase the damage if you have them up. Enough hydro application playing fits with neither the Xingshu and the last. Since playing another hydro or playing more application, inside that could be Emily or Nahida Amber for the Master's Bufo may not take advantage so much because you know how I end up on. To explain that the Bloom team's the Mastery not only takes advantage of the character in field but also take advantage of all the characters. Would be something similar to this chicks of some carries around here perhaps above is more useful than the 6 of Chevreuse than the U. Cookie really might put it around here that he likes the Bloom teams with fit because if it's interesting and if it's strong Quirarara has nothing beyond Quirarara, basically has a C4 that gives you energy if I remember correctly increases. A little Constellations of the damage you can do with the ulti, and that the shield is restored, but the reality is that you won. With Cherodas all you have to do is a decent medium shield can apply in Kirara field, the facilities give exactly. Zam Yao like Quirarara really has constellations that what they do is more hits from the rabbit, so you have more healing hits or more application from within. But the reality is that its functioning as such does not change much. Yao is. Below Baiju and Yao, these extra ticks, both healing and application inside, as I always explain, are poorly distributed because its elemental has use of 10 cooldown of 15, but its ulti has cooldown of 20, but it is. You Pemius 3 rabbits and each rabbit lasts 5, and you have to be in the field giving jumps to spam the odes. So you never have a full uptime is to say you have to go in and out, with which the real team that benefits from this strange rotation is basically the Bloom teams, and the Bloom teams are played without Yao or played with Kokomi even. Now with Shisui are not bad, then the reality is that Yao, because you do have a 6 that gives you more ticks of the rabbit and such. That's a more strokes from inside and more healing, but it does not bring anything changes the character Layla something similar. To these characters with defensive contribution, Layla is super similar to Carrara, is only a shield, and it is true that the Chi 6 of Layla, what it does is give you more damage in the ulti ticks that makes the ulti ticks also climb with your life with it. Which deserves a little more life for its shield, which is like the Layla full life, because besides your 6 will make you do a little bit. Of your ulti this brings to the team this with some broken character. This Bufo is enough or relevant, not Layla those constellations. C4 and GX are just like for someone to read them and say, so if I already play Layla and pull out the C4, I do more damage with my Karn. You don't care too much about activating that normal attack damage and loaded it doesn't actually activate. Alright, and it doesn't activate as fast as you'd like, so really like these defensive supports, here it does. Zero does his job perfectly, that it is to give you a shield or throw the bunnies and heal and put blows inside Yunjin Has. Cheeks, that gives you more attack speed plus attack speed. I think it's not sure if 12% makes it then with the hit lag. In the end, it is like a species of 6, 7, 8%, but added to other bupos of attack. Speed more or less than normal, it is noticed quite. Because the main carry that has more attack speed apart from the normal attack bufo that Yunjin gives, you can arrive. To serve is to say Yunjin with the Chi 6. And only with the Chi 6, as I said in other videos, can contribute more than Candace, so to say inside. What it's like to blow normal attacks because of the speed of attack, Candace doesn't give you any bufo attack speed, so within what fits, because Yunjin would have a more or less decent chick support that can do something, and that helps and that surpasses Candace as a normal attack bufo. So I'd go this way to the part of Chevreuse that's interesting, but it won't change you. Nothing at all, in fact, Kooky, even so I told you that whatever is good may be interesting according to what conditions. Chanyan C2 is the one that makes your ulti, the physical part, have a 100% probability with which you just have to play. To Chanyan with critical damage, and then the rest of stats as recharge to have ulti bonus, and the whole story this means. That Chanyan Steel is interesting, the rest of it doesn't matter whether you go to the Chi 6 or anything, but it would be a C2 Haidava. These carries that raise you more damage, but no one plays Chanyan, so the Chanyan Steel would put it around here to the height. Next character, Diona. Diona, I think you all know she has a very interesting chicks. Diona is practically no longer used because as a healer, cryo defensive input is used in Charlotte, or in teams with a set. Healing tips in the area hurt you. Layla is used as a shield. But Diona has a 6 that gives more healing bonus if you have less than half a life to receive a tick of maybe 8,000, 9,000 healing with your ulti, and if you have more than half of life with the character in the field receives a bonus of 200 masters. This is very important. Diona's Chi Ease is important. I'd even put it over here above the init, maybe at the height of these dedicated supports. Especially because Diona does continue to rescue because she still has a team. Concrete where it can be used and where it can break everything above Lila and Charlotte, which is with Gamin. There's a meltdown team with Gammon, F2PP, that's Gammon Rosaria, Diona Bennett that I said before, where gaming melts and benefits Diona's buffo and Diona's shield, so you don't get interrupted, and on that Diona team, not only does it do enough, but in any other team where it plays is Diona Chicks old. Because teams I know with Hu Tao, that there were enough. Melted Inverse and others, the chicks, and the 200 mastery to the character in field that benefits the cheeks. It's very important, but Diona's not used anyway. Don't kill yourself for Diona's cheeks ease. Alloy. I'm not even going to talk about Alloy getting hit. I'm so sorry. I don't know if it's the C4 or the CX. I think it's the Cheeks and Toma that buffs the character's normal attacks under the shield. Does this go well for a team of Scaramouche plus the Pyro Continents and everything else? Well, it's not bad. Do you change the character? No, Toma really does all her work, Tuchero. It's complicated, Zoma. You have to get a lot of recharge if you want a good shield, a lot of life. If you want to crack a lot of mastery, but then you lose the other one. Toma Tuchero of her work, and she doesn't have a constellation that will make you survive, like Kuki, who at least gives her something of all. Sayu has a Chix, which is its important constellation that turns all mastery into more healing and into a... Is that interesting? Does it make 6 instead of building triple attack, build triple mastery because it cures more? Indeed, so Sayu the Chix really is not that it changes, neither that it heals more nor better, nor does anything else or better apart from the exploration that Jin? But it is not better to explore than Xianyun is to say Sayu has literally disappeared from the map has. A G6 which I'll put it around here with Shabra's checks from a support that's better than a 6 from a carry. In the end, but well, just your chicks makes you curate a little bit more, but you build it instead of triple mastery attack. Our characters of the one with which youngling his C4 is one of the best in the game gives you 14 seconds of Pyronado instead of 4. Tentat has without the C4, I think is the one that changes most any account. I really think is Constellation number 1 that you must acquire not only by throwing the banners now that Xiangling comes with Yolani and Emily, but in the store that you can. Go getting little by little, and you can get a free Xiangling Alabism free, so you will be very new. So if you have Xiangling and you like a constellation, go to the Abyss. 3 to give the missing constellation is one of the most important for any. Yangfei account is another chicks of a carry that gives him more damage, maybe would put it above Cito's because the C6 gives you A. Zeal more for the loaders and increased regeneration if I remember correctly of these seals with which makes the 6 you have. 0 cost of endurance because by already getting 4 stamps with the Shi-X and taking into account the cone and its talent that reduces you. The cost of the loaders, according to the stamps you have, becomes a cost saving of 0% loaders, or the 100%, i.e. you have no cost and apart from more stamps more damage your load, with the 6 with 4 stamps makes. You have 0 load cost and besides multiply if you increase your load damage, i.e. it's a powerful C6 the C4 of Yangfei. Also, out of curiosity gives you a shield to Yangfei herself, or if you're going to play it as core support from some Hu Tao team, that has been seen in his time of Hu Tao, Xingqiu, Kazuha. Yangfei since then also serves as a kind of support for it. Give a shield to Hu Tao and when between Yangfei then make a combo very fast. Nuking making elemental charged, ulti loaded and you get out of the field. Rosario came out later from Shongyun and there are 2 of the one Rosaria its C2 is ECDU. The most important one in its chicks is the worst one in history that nobody kills for taking out Rosaria Chinks. The C2 is the one that gives you 4 seconds. More in your elementary skill and you go from 8 to 12, 15 cooldown with a 1.5 casting or 13.5 15 with I. Which there is only a second where there is no ulti in field. This full up time that has spoken in other videos, that is that your ulting cover all the time of your cooldown and rotation with which the C2 of Rosaria who wants to play Rosaria if it is interesting. An important C4 is more energy. The 6 is the low of physical resistances that has never been used. And it is useless because it's much better to use a superconductor and save yourself the chicks of a 4-star with which Rosaria C2 is a constellation. Important would put it around here even above Diona because it does serve enough, and now it does all the characters once and for all. That our characters of the one well Shongyun has I think it is the cone, the C2 that reduces the cooldown of the rest of the team. Mechanix that was never used again and seems interesting. Raiden Chicks does use it, but hardly anyone has Raiden. Chicks and the Shungyun, Cheeks is one more Karambar with the ulti. We know that the ulti of Shungyun is therefore recommended to melt inverse. Has a kind of calculation that all the hits the 4 could melt, with which when you throw the ulti of Shungyun, all hits melt if the enemy is applied by Pyro, with which your 6 is much more damage like carry. If you play it ini, carry melted inverse and its C2 is curious this if it serves is not worth it because here at the height of Xinyang that because it does more damage with the ulti, and now it doesn't have more we finish. Razor has constellations that give you more recharge art. Energy the Chicks gives you an extra electro hit when you hit with your controller without having to throw the ulti that stops. High problem and such serves no constellation of Razor playing it. Makes it Kaya if I remember the C2 wrong or the C4 in the comments correct me because I don't have the whole library in the head of all the constellations of the characters. Julian, thank you very much. One will say, wow, you know all the constellations because if I am creator of the, but of Kaya. I'm not sure if it's the C2 or the C4 which is a constellation that as the character in the field eliminates an enemy and this does. That depends on you having many little enemies that can disappear. Because if you have a very large boss, the constellation Kaya does not activate because this C2 or C4 that I do not remember well gives you more duration in your ulti until a full up time enough. Complete that's very good is interesting not because half of times in the abyss with Kaya you will play against an enemy that it is a giant boss with which you will not have eliminations to increase the time of your ulti with which a Rosaria is. Better up DPS than Kaya because Kaya sometimes you won't have full up time is the C2 I think because Kaya C4 gives you a shield. I don't know if anyone knew but Kaya C4 gives you a shield that you can then rotate the main character if friends Kaya da. A shield like that, all weird, so nothing Kaya would put it around here next to Razor, doesn't much serve any of his constellations. Fischl has a 6 that gives you a lot of absurd because what he literally says, and it comes true, is that every time you Field character hits you generate an extra hit of Electro in proportion to Fischl's attack, so Fischl uploads this slot of Cell to the Celestials not only by proportion but by the base attack, so high with which the Sheik's official is one of B. In addition to that, Xiangling official is a very important character with which the Chi-6 official is also one of the four. The most important of the 4 stars apart from the dedicated supports the cone is Akarosa, and because a little what we are seeing. This way Ningguang nothing has a C4 that doubles the barrier if you break it is some kind of sacrifice, but in Constellation. And Ningguang's Chikis makes you accumulate 6 Hades, and when you throw a load after the ulti, you put a load with the Hades. That is to say, the combo with Cheeks of Ningguang, as it would be ulti screen. You break the screen, you reposition the screen, and throw the load with the Hades with the screen. And it's like some kind of fast nuke that nobody knows exists and nobody uses it to leave it on the comments, and you knew what this combo is like because I think no one knows that Ningguang has an interesting combo, so nothing in. Ningguang's Chi is a little useless for nothing. You have a better but good combo around here with Razor and Kaya Baidu. Baidu has a Cheeks that lowers the enemy's electro resistances, no good for nothing, do not worry Kazuha Shade Green. It does better, but it has a C2 that would put it here at Rosaria's level because it's interesting, and Beidou is a powerful sub DPS. What it does is that dragons with the C2 bounce off 2 more enemies, with which every time you put a basic dragon, hits 3 enemies to the hitter and 2 more, and that increases the multiple damage of Beidou, quite in fact. And the application. Electro to play later, as today's spree team's electro-loaded equipment is interesting. Is very interesting, is one of the best C2, so as you see in this order. In fact, it's pretty good. Barbarous has the Cheeks that heals, and now in the Abyss have made that every time you reset a room, all constellations and so on and cooldowns are generally reset, with which the Barbarous 6 serves you every time you reset a room, and if you pass the floor in the next room you will be able to use it again, with which the Seek's Barbarian to revive serves. Not that there are many teams where Barbarian is incredibly powerful, but already heals you, a character thing that Kokomi does not, and Barbaric today is mainly used for. Bloom equipment is not bad for Bloom equipment, and also for Hyper Bloom equipment, especially with an Electro. Needless to say, Consino Barbara is a good character playing a kind of Fate Fiorina. Born Barbara, you have a very good team. If not, and Barbarous can bring you Dragon Hunter sacrifice for but sacrifice to reset his elemental then. I'm going to put it here in a maybe at the height of here, for example, because it still serves and revives you, but good. You don't have to kill yourself for the Barbarous Chicks. You don't play too much. Maybe I'll put it here at the height that I own it. It's used a lot, but it's interesting not. He's not Chicks dependent, not he's a carry. That with the Seeks transforms all defense in brief attack, as it makes milestone when throwing the ulti. And if you don't have no 6, you will notice that he doesn't literally do anything. Even though you have a good team, so Noel's Chicks being so important and being dependent, I'm going to put it here on Earth. Maybe down here, I don't know, more or less at the height of it. I'll put to the height of these Barbarous and Diona supports, I don't know. Above, below, more or less here, because if you don't have anything and we end up with 2 of the free initial characters, Amber and Smooth, and 2 of the 4 Gynaecists of the Apocalypse, well, without having 2 interesting constellations, the C2 gives you full uptime of your ulti, because normally you have 15, 20, 15 utilization, 20 cooldown. C2 lowers the resistance hydro 15% of the thing. Enemies, that is not so important when you go with an enemo, but if you go a hyper team, a double hydro of without more and the day. If it increases the damage hydro, that is a lot, and gives you 3 more seconds of ulti, that makes you 18-20 plus the time spent, then 18.5-20, with which that full uptime that I was talking about is important in the C2 of without, that if I would put it above. All of you are even here or down here, but the Chicks without you just extend the damage of without that, because every normal 3, including 2 not 1, if that 1 puts 5 swords in you, and that makes you not only do more harm, but also apply more hydro for all the national equipment and Hu Tao vaporizations that are the most applied equipment of hydro. They need to access if it's important if they could get here. The truth is, if they're above supports, dedicated to open teams, because this is for 1 team, and this is one of the best 4 stars in the game for all the teams in the game, so if Bennett's cone, I'll put it over here next to Sucrose, maybe above these here, maybe. Over here also Bennett's cone makes your ulti always cure, and always give you the boo if Bennett is not cone or cure or give Fae. But as long as it heals you, it doesn't give you the bufo, with which you lose many snapshots to increase the damage of the team. That when a character throws the ulti always benefits Bennett's bufo, and even if Bennett's ulti runs out for as long as it lasts, the ulti of the character that makes snapshot will continue with Bennett's bufo until the ulti runs out. That's the snapshot then. Happens with the rest of Bennett Bufos, not only but the rest of the characters Team Bufos, minus the year-inflicted bonuses. And some weird extra thing like that is that if Bennett's cone is paramount in all accounts, I think you knew that these 3 were going to be up here smooth as a C4 or C2. I don't remember well like that to her, that what it does is reduce the defense of enemies, and defense is not resistance is a more important value with which as sub-DPS of Eula, or on some equipment. Rara, because it may not be bad the lower defense of the enemies with which that constellation of smooth would put it. I don't know whether to put it around here or down there. Choose where to put it, because in the end, maybe it's important. Maybe I'd say that lower defense if it's more important to that everything we've seen before, because if it does much damage would put it down to. And finally Amber, I think that it was the C4 because the C6 what it does is blow the attack percent when you throw the ulti the 6 Bufa, the attack percent of the A, allies and so on, and I think that that of the ulti also does what the C4 and the T6 of Amber forgotten is not important what it does. The C4 is to give you, I think, that one more burden of Baron Bunny, and besides increases the gross damage of Baron Bunny, that is the constellation. Important of Amber, all these videos of Amber making 200 and 300,000 with the Baron Bunny that I have made live and that you will have viewed on the internet on other sites are also only real, can only be achieved if you use the Amber C4 that increases you there. I heard Baron Bunny and C2 and the 2 charges of your elementary forgiveness. So Amber has a C4 to be a DPS nuker for. Make some videos and such interesting. I will put it here at the height of the carries above Chingan, below good. Over Shengyun would also say I'll put it there basically, so this is the tier of Genshin's best constellations. Impact of the 4 stars that can fix accounts from the characters that don't care exactly if they have constellations. Although you have been explained each in case you are in the end, because you can each character has its explanation as well. Practically don't change so far, all these. Don't change anything the B if they give you a little bit, because the 0 is of cabbage, and more cabbage application is no longer used. Nor is it much application, if there has been little E's that are cavities and increase the damage. In general, there is also she who in the end is not going to be better than Shengyun, or that Jin but does things with the Cheeks Chevrus. That her Cheeks is terrible and that Tuchero does everything, but at least it is a support that does something. She attacks normal speed. Attack with Chixit that makes you survive with 1 of life for itself, and from that they are constellations that contribute enough to the accounts and to the team. The constellation of lower defense, Elisa the C4 and 6 of KB. For the Bloom teams, that is the only lie. Where the C4 is played, the Init for extra charging the Cheeks of Noel. That if there is no 6, you do not play Noel, but with Chicks it is strong. Like carry a team with concrete and correct. The Jin use a Barbara that cures and revives a character and can already be used perfectly. In the Abyss, every reset will put it above Dione, the Chisibs of Dione that gives you 200 of mastery, very strong for the team. The C2 of Bayadu for the extra dragons and the extra damage, that is a savage, and the application the C2 of Rosaria full uptime. In its ulti Jingsiv, quite important dedicated supports, but can be played without Chicks, these 2 specifically the Cone and 6 of Vav. Gaming Chicks Gaming mostly makes you one of the best carries of the game, literally below Novelette and Arlecchino. And little more, the Truth Cone is sacrosanct energy for the team, 1 elemental plus put together, etc. More whirlwind damage, and you have a sacrosanct Taser Chicks dedicated support Chicks, dedicated support that would not play and are not recommended on a computer if they are not 6 Chicks Chicksy. Fish Zub DPS amazing, increases your damage, a silly Bennett Cone, you know. Singchu C2 TC2 Raisai and Gling. These are the VAR best constellations of the 4 stars of Genshin Impact, and reviewing the top wouldn't change anything. I think is enough. Well, little more, leave a good like, a good use of Bennett, subscribe you, and do for all the support to the channel, very invited to the direct links here below the description. And now care a lot about having very good day and Cheeto.